You're listening to the Let's Talk Marketing podcast hosted by me, Katya Allison. So, what have you gotten yourself into? In short, you have gotten yourself into a good time, great conversation, and a little bit of learning along the way. Through insightful interviews with top marketers, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders, I get to explore the latest trends, techniques, and strategies in the world of marketing. I'm here to offer you engaging and informative discussions to help you stay up to date on the latest trends and take your marketing skills to the next level. In this episode, we are covering building a brand community with my guest, Gabe Fernando. Now, Gabe is personal. You will definitely pick up on that. He is creative. You will hear about how his creativity comes out in building brand community, and he's passionate. He has built and designed influencer programs that have turned into thriving communities. His experiences include creating multiple programs that scale brands, generate revenue, and build positive relationships with each individual or team he meets. Now, with experience in both Southern California and Brussels, Belgium, he is with us today on the podcast, bringing his unique perspective to the table. So let's talk marketing with Gabe Fernando. Okay, welcome to Let's Talk Marketing, Gabe. We're just going to hit start here because you and I will talk forever. I'm really excited to have you on the show.
It is amazing to see you. I miss you.
You should miss me. I'm a big deal. What can I
You're not
say?
going to say it back?
Just kidding. Just kidding. I'm not that big of a deal. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about just kind of building a brand community. Before we dive into that, let's get to know you a little bit. Okay, you ready for it? You ready for my standard questions?
No, I know these
I'll-
are going to be different. Let's go.
yeah, I should have made different ones just for you. Okay, so what was your first marketing role and what is your current role? So let's start with what was your first what you would consider a marketing role?
Okay, so I promised you I'd try to keep these answers a little bit shorter because I can be very loquacious. My first marketing role actually was a
I just
product
can't
marketing.
even with you.
Back to the answer. Back to the answer.
Okay, back to the answer. Back to the answer.
My first actual marketing role was a product marketing role actually. Subtle Flex was an internship in Belgium. It was with UPS Europe. Don't ask me too many questions about it because it was for a study abroad program, and I'll be honest, I did more traveling than studying out there. So I'll kind of leave it at that was my first marketing experience. But my actual marketing role that I actually had to do stuff was with AEG Sports. It was with the Tour of California, Tour of Amgen California. It was like a cycling event that used to happen here. It's on a hiatus from what I know, but I was part of the grassroots marketing team where we would travel to the cities from NorCal and SoCal and just promote this race. But that was my first ever marketing experience.
Nice. So what do you currently do now? What's your current marketing role?
Current role. So currently I'm at Cuts Clothing. If you don't know Cuts Clothing, you should. But I'm here working as the ambassador and creator manager. So I really work with the ambassadors or brand ambassadors or influencers or creators, whatever you like to call them. Very personal basis, really get to know them, really jump on calls with them and try to work on activations with them, when to go live and kind of plan out their content, but as well as the partnerships, contract, everything under that umbrella.
I love it. Now, of what you're currently doing, what do you love about what you do? But also, on the flip side, what would you pluck out of it if you could? So let's start with what you love about what you're doing right now.
Wow. Okay. So again, short answers. Let's keep it going. So what I love is actually
We've got a time frame.
it's gonna be. I'm like watching the clock right now, to be honest.
Don't watch the clock. This is supposed to be very relaxing and authentic, Gabe.
This is me freaking out about the time because my conversations go long. But to answer your question, because of time, um, I think my favorite thing I love about it is it's so cliche. It's gonna be a lot of cliches. This though is the connections because a lot of the people that I've worked with now, such like I've met you through working here. Like it's turned more into more of a working relationship, but more of like an actual friendship. I'd like to say, but
Yeah.
also with the creators I work with, some of these gentlemen and ladies that I've met, working now I'm at the point where we're just texting, we're random FaceTiming. a lot of these people have turned into like brothers to me. A lot of these guys that I started the program
Mhm.
with started here. It's absolutely insane to think about. And we were actually doing a whole, like, what's the word? Now it's gonna bug me. A whole recap on our like careers. Are going like, wow, remember we met 2 years ago when I just sent that cold outreach, or you sent that cold outreach to me, and look where we are now. We're literally FaceTime and asking how life is going when we're visiting. So I think that's my favorite part is honestly the connections I have with these creators.
I like it. What would you pluck out of it?
I think what I would take out, that's a tough thing because I try to, my mindset's very weird. I try to think of the positives even in those negative situations, I guess. That's
Yeah,
how I like was really, I think more of just being, having to deal with sometimes managers and agents. Sorry to those managers and agents. I've met countless amazing ones, but there are those couple that just leave a really bad taste in your mouth. And it's sorry,
yeah,
not even just managers and agents. Sometimes it's some creators. And again, maybe it's there's a miscommunication on my end, which I'm happy to acknowledge, or maybe it's a miscommunication on your end where it didn't really work out. But I think sometimes that's the issue is that I'm like, oh God, like there are times I'm like, I just don't want to work with another influencer after having that interaction. But
yeah.
99% of the time, it's really, really good. Let's put it that way.
What about that do you not like? Is it just an attitude thing or a pestering thing? Like, what specifically do you not like about that?
I think it's more of the God, this sounds so bad now. I should have thought about this a little more, but it's more of like
Listen,
the
I know
entitlement part of it, if that makes sense.
it's
Like
it's
they
the what?
think that the entitlement part of it, where it's all like, oh,
Oh,
I'm
got it,
this
got it,
and
got it.
that. Like you think you're above in a certain way. And again, I 100% respect the grind that these creators, these managers, the agents have created. But at the same time, there has to be that understanding is like, hey, like sometimes brands aren't able to, in a way, throw out that kind of money you're asking for. Maybe they're
Yeah,
start a real relationship where they don't want it to be transactional first. And I get it. When it comes to business, sometimes it is transactional. Most of the time it is transactional. But at the same time, there has to be that whole vibe where it's like, hey, no, we really want to be here because we want to be here. It's not like, oh, this brand's offering me 10K. I'm just going to go with them because of 10K instead of you
yeah.
guys, even though I've been working with you guys for X amount of years. But again, every situation is different. I think that's really my lingering pesting part about it is that like it's just like
Yeah.
sometimes it turns into more of like, oh, it's only transaction based. There's no actual take the time to get to know who I am, take the time to get to know who the brand is, X, Y, and Z.
Well, it makes sense that that's what you don't like because what you do like is the relationship. What you don't like is the transaction. And then I would sum it up to even say, like, it's the ego part, right? Like,
Mhm.
when people step up to the plate and they bring their ego along with them, it just, I think that it can leave anybody with a bad taste, whether it's a talent manager, a creator, or really anybody in a marketing role. As
Mhm.
soon as someone's ego comes along with them as well too, and like that entitlement ego, it's so unattractive. And
Mhm.
I mean, we're all people at the end of the day. Like we're all people at the end of the day. So don't pretend like, you know,
Yeah,
you deserve
100%.
all of these things.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I just think I like having a casual conversation first, kind of like you and me are having right now. It's like we
Yeah.
can just easily. Am I allowed to cuss or no? Just thought I'd ask.
You are.
So we're allowed
Fuck
to,
yes.
yeah, okay. Well, we're allowed to shoot the shit. Like that's what I want to be able to do. Where I want to be able to shoot you a message and say like, "Hey, saw that video. That was amazing." And I don't get like stiff arm, be like, "Oh, like cool, thanks." Like,
Yeah.
why are you texting me? Like one of those things. And again, I've never gotten anything to that like experience. I've mostly got the experience of like a lot of creators are like, and I are able to have these FaceTime calls, able to have a normal conversation, shoot each other a
Yeah.
message. Like that's the thing that I love. But again, every person's different. Maybe I caught someone on a bad day. Maybe they're really focused on business first because they had their negative experiences with the brand. And I get it.
Yeah.
I always try to put my feet in both shoes to really understand it because there have been times I've been frustrated and then they tell me, hey, this is the experience I had. So sorry if I come off that way. Dude, I'm happy with that. Just communicate that with me and I will do whatever I can to make sure that the experience changes for you in a more positive direction.
I like that. I like the open communication. I
Huge.
think you're also in a space where you really do have to kind of keep up to date and like you have to be on social media networks to
Mhm.
stay up to speed. So now I'm kind of curious what social networks you're on for inspiration, entertainment, and education.
Yeah,
So
MySpace
if
is
you go to any social network for those, because I've interviewed people who are like, yeah, I'm not on it. I'm on there all day for work, I don't want to be on there for any of those three things. But do you go to social networks for either of those?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, social media is such a crazy thing because a lot of the social media right now is so intertwined where it's like if I watch one thing, I felt like I just saw that on another channel. And
Yeah.
it's crazy because obviously the evolution of like TikTok really showing how short videos, short form content can be a great thing. Like YouTube and Instagram both took that with Reels and Shorts. But
Mhm.
to go back to your question, what social media networks do I really go out for? Like for inspiration, personally, like I don't know. I think when it comes to work, I try to, because I'm so locked in on social media, I really,
Yeah.
my source of inspiration is enjoying the moment right there. Again, very cliche. Like when I'm with people I'm around that I like love, people I love hanging out and stuff like that, I try to keep my phone away just because that's what I like doing. So I don't really have inspiration there with social media just because that might be like
Yeah.
a double negative just because I'm all around it so much. Don't get me wrong. There are a lot of great channels that have a lot of inspiration that I love seeing, but I see that all at work already. And I'm like, okay, on
Yeah.
my own time, I won't do that. But for entertainment, I think there has that entertainment aspect where I do love watching certain platforms like YouTube and TikTok and IG. I think are all great ways of doing it. It's a great way, in quotations, to kill time, but also a great way just to like check stuff out. I was just talking to you about how um, I want to like I got really into like moto vlogs, for instance. I was watching all that on YouTube, literally listening to it, and I think that's a cool.
Yeah.
Wow, now I'm going back on my answer because now that's my source of inspiration, that moto vlog. So
I feel like you can go to all of the networks for a
mhm,
little bit of the inspiration and entertainment and education. I
mhm,
think that to your point, like because you're in it all day long, you're naturally going to get inspired. So you're not like actively going there to
yeah,
get inspired, right? Where I think like I guess what comes to mind for a social network like that is Pinterest, right? Like, oh,
mhm,
I have this idea that I want to go. I need to go somewhere for inspiration. I'm going to go to Pinterest. But you're in social all the time, so that makes sense. And entertainment for sure. But how do you
mhm.
where do you go for education? Do you go anywhere on social media or do you go to a social network to get educated?
Yeah, so I think, yeah, you actually took all the words right out of my mouth. So thank you for
You're
making me
welcome.
look like an idiot. No, 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 no. You always do that. That's what you always do for me. I appreciate that since day one. In terms of education, it's kind of crazy to think about. Like, I'd say again, all the above. Like everything I go
Yeah.
through sometimes, and I think it's so cool, but also it makes me feel old. Like back in the day, when I say back in the day, maybe it's not too long ago, but like, remember when we had to look at Google for everything? Or like actually had to go check something
Yes.
out. Now people go to TikTok and say, hey, how do I do X, Y, and Z? And I'm all like, whoa, like that's such an interesting like search engine right there to think about. So I would say
Yeah.
all of it. Honestly, like I actually find some cool things when it comes to education, whether it's about social trends, whether it's about sometimes history, sometimes geography, sometimes about travel. Like I'll look at all those platforms to really, really understand that. So more or less all of it ties in together. And you actually, like I said, I'm gonna go in a circle right here, but maybe I don't really go out seeking it, but because I work in social media full time, um, it just comes up like literally on my work day when I'm scouting out some channels. I'll go down a rabbit hole and maybe I'll just get inspired by what I'm watching. But then I'm also being entertained by this stuff and then learning something right there.
Yeah. I mean, the beauty is when one post can do all three of those things, right?
Mhm.
Now, we talk social networks, but let's put social networks on a shelf. How do you stay up to date on trends? Is there something that you're reading? You got to go to Ad Age or social media or
Mhm.
social media examiner. That's the one I was thinking about. Or is there a newsletter? Like, how do you stay up to date on trends?
So that's a really good question. So a lot of the places you brought up, I've heard of a ton of these. I personally don't use them. The reason I don't use them is because I'm on social media so much already. I'll start seeing what the trends are. Like it's so crazy. Like when let's do TikTok for instance, because everyone knows TikTok. Like when a dance comes out, I'll know it right away because it completely floods not only the feed I'm on because that's my personal feed, but because I'm also on the Cuts account, it'll flood the Cuts account. I'll be like, okay, like this is obviously something that's going big. Or if it's something on YouTube, I start seeing all these like videos getting recommended for me, and I'm like, oh, these are all like a similar style video, and maybe that's something it's doing. And again, same thing about Instagram. Instagram's the same thing as TikTok. It'll kind of flood the channel. So I really don't use anything outside of just being on social media daily. That's kind of how it is. I think the one thing that's tough is staying up to date on trends. Like you can read these articles and stuff, and again, not knocking what you said. I think those are an excellent way of really using those, but the best way to stay up to date is just be on it, because maybe you read that
Yeah.
article and it came out a week before and it's all like, okay, well now that trend's out of date, and you're all like, oh wow, like what the heck, like I gotta get ahead of that now. Like how do I get ahead of that when I'm already behind?
No, I love it. And I think that's completely valid too, especially on the social trends aspect of it, right? You do really have to be on the social networks to
Mhm.
see what's popping off. And also even have like, I don't know if you have multiple accounts because I know that you said, you have your personal and then you're looking at cuts, but I know that there are a lot of marketers out there that will create multiple, even like TikTok accounts so that they can see other things that are being served to like hone in on either a right creator or to get inspired in a different way.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that's tough, and not tough, I think one thing that's interesting about trends is that uh, my favorite kind of trends are seeing someone do something different. I think that's kind of
Yeah.
a double negative. Like I remember one of the creators that I was working with, I won't say any names and stuff, but they were really focused on doing like vlogs on TikTok, and I was all like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's a really cool thing to do." And this was back in 2021. So I know that doesn't sound too long ago. Maybe it does sound long ago, but like vlogging on TikTok was the thing. People thought TikTok was just dances and stuff like that. And their
Yeah.
channel skyrocketed. And now I see more vlogs as I go, but I always look at that guy and say, hey, like your channel is the reason that vlogs became so big. And I think I put that up there as one of my gold stars when I told our team, hey, we should really start finding these TikTok vloggers because I think it's going to get big. And hands up, no one really listened. Just want to say, and look where it is now. Just want to say, I'll never forget when one of my team members walked up to me and said, like, "Dang, I wish we listened earlier about you saying vlogs because vlogs are just popping off now, and all these channels are just growing." And I'm all
Yeah.
like, "Didn't need any article for that. I just looked at it."
It's all about storytelling and really like the
Mhm.
vlogs allow you to be able to do a lot of the storytelling and that's what people want and like bite-sized
Exactly.
amounts, right? Because I think, well, now we're going to go down a rabbit hole, but let's talk marketing first before I feel like we have 5 podcasts in us in just this one conversation because I know that we could go down that rabbit hole. But today I brought you on here because I want to talk about building a brand community. I know that you've done such a great job at Cuts being able to build that community. I mean, the part that you love is the relationship part, right?
Mhm.
Like that is community building. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think is the one thing a community needs to be successful.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing a community needs is a face to the name. And I'm not saying a specific creator that, I just think someone actually being there because I'm sure you've dealt with this a lot of times. Like
Yeah.
emails are great, but if there's no face name, I really don't feel like responding to an email. I think that's how
Yeah.
I look at it. I always try to jump on the call. I try to set up these calls and really understanding that because if I've talked with a handful of brands that have asked me, hey, how did Cuts build this? How do you have such a strong knit community? It's because I said, you know what? Let's jump on call. Let's do a group Zoom, and people know who I am. I know who they are, and it's not just some robotic email saying like, hey, thanks so much for applying. We'll get back to you, or hey, like, awesome, you've been accepted. Post here, and then we'll send you another package. No, no, like I'll take the time and go, hey, Katya, I really, really love that post. Any chance we can jump on call just to shoot the shit, and we'll kind of go from there, and then from there on, it's like you feel like you're actually included in the brand. You feel like you're seeing behind the scenes what people don't know. You feel like you have that connection with the brand where, like, oh, I know someone there. Like, it's not just an email. And you feel like you're not working for the brand, you're working with the brand. So I think to answer your question from a loquacious answer, um, just really have a face really owning that and having someone that really breathes the brand, like being the face of it.
And how do you find, or not how do you find, but how do your influencers turn into your community? Because I would imagine once they come through the door, right? Well, not literally come through the
Yeah.
door, but
There's
like
knock
there's
actually.
got yeah. Even though you guys moved offices and whatnot, but like I would imagine that you've got people who are coming in who aren't quite part of the community first, or maybe that is how you're also finding your influencers as well too. But the people who are just kind of starting off in like the Cuts ambassador or program, or like just
Mhm.
working with Cuts, right? Like how do you get them to like think of themselves as a community? I don't know if that makes any sense. Like Do they do they know they're part of a community just by being an influencer with cuts, or is that something that you take the time to develop?
Yeah, I think two parts to that question. One is it does take time to develop because a lot of these creators are already in other programs, but when they join Cut, they're like, I've never seen a program like this where I talk to someone. Like I've never like
Yeah,
actually left on call. Like I've actually never met a ton of other creators based off this. And I think that's one of the coolest things is that when I first started it, it was a little bit tough. I kind of was like, how can I get these gentlemen? Because we started off with a men's program. How can I get these gentlemen to jump on call? Like, what is going to spark their interest? And it's like, again, play with wording, kind of say like, hey, like, guys, Gabe here with Cuts. I would love to take time to jump on call. We included the CEO Steven at the time to jump on call, so he was able to be part of it. I think that was a really cool opportunity for people to go like, oh, I can meet the CEO, the founder of a brand. I think that was one way.
yeah,
But then it's also as this community builds, really being inclusive to the people that make it to the community. I guess that's the right word, but like really understand that when they
okay,
jump on this first call, that everyone has been in your same shoes before. Like they've been nervous. They've been
mhm,
like, how do I jump in here? How do I say something? Are people going to listen? But really making sure that the guys, and I'm going to say guys because it was a men's community at first, the guys really are inclusive of that person saying like, yo, Katya, it's so great to see you. So nice to meet you. And I remember on some of these calls, it was really funny. Some of the gentlemen would be like, oh my God, like Katya, like I actually love your content. I've been following your content. Like that's why I got inspired. And when you see that really build, it really just kind of for me lights a little spark in my eye when I'm like, oh, this is cool
yeah.
that I was that bridge to you meeting someone that you are inspired by. But I hope I answered your question there with my long answer.
Stop worrying about your long answers, they're
What
perfect.
20
And
minutes? You
yes,
gave me a 30-minute time frame.
no, I'm sure that we will go over and it is fine. But what I was going to ask you then, and yes, you answer the question, but the
Mhm.
follow-up to that is what's the value of that community for a brand in your opinion?
Yeah. Oof. The value of that community is like honestly just having people that don't really work internally with the brand. How do I explain this? Just really know that they're like living and breathing for them. I don't know how to put this. Like they're willing to do whatever it takes, I guess, for the brand. They want to be part of that brand success where they're like, oh, even if one member, let's just say smaller creator, like isn't really going viral or anything like that, viral or anything like that, but they have their community of homies and stuff like that. If they start
Yeah.
getting those guys into cuts, that spreads like wildfire because it's word of mouth right there. And I think that's one of the biggest things about community is that it really entices other people or other creators to be like, how do I be part of something like that? Like I love the cuts messaging. How do I get to be part of that? Do I need to change my lifestyle? Do I need to say, hey, like, do I need to make that change? Say, maybe I need to get back to the gym and go do that. Maybe I need to go start really grinding on my work. Maybe I want to go towards my passion and really travel the world and really get there. And I think that's one of the biggest things about communities. It inspires other people, but it also really makes people start to be like, okay, I want to be part of that exclusive group of people. Like I want to meet a bunch of new people, new guys, new girls. And really like start pushing myself to the next limit, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. I think you're also describing a lot of qualitative ways to measure it. So,
Mm-hmm.
how would you, you know, let's say your boss, well, not literally your boss, but let's say someone's boss comes up to them and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, what's the value of this to us? Like, what's my bottom line? What am I going to report to the board
Mm-hmm.
about the community? Why are we spending so much time in that? Like, how do
Mm-hmm.
you think you can or can you quantify that kind of qualitative brand, almost brand equity that you're building
Yeah.
based on this community?
I mean, obviously, we can say, like, hey, like if I go towards social media, hey, we have a ton of people posting for us. There's some quantitative data right there. Hey, people are driving orders, more quantitative data. But I think at the same time, when people lose track of the communities, we try to put a value on that number, but at this, or we try to put a value on or a number, a value number, if that makes sense, on what the
Yes.
community is. And I think there's so much more to it because, like I said, we you can someone can always have a brand that's just so focused on generating revenue, but what's going to bring me back to that brand? I think if we look at it, some of the brands that I'm inspired by, I'm going to name one of them, GoPro, for instance. I think GoPro
Yeah.
does an amazing job with their marketing and their community because they're inspiring people to do other things. They're trying to really tell them, hey, like, go out and get a camera. You can easily do this. Go, like, this camera's so small. Go record. Go check out certain things like that.
Yeah.
With cuts, it's like for us, hey, anyone can rock this T-shirt. Like, you're gonna look good rocking this T-shirt. Like, if you're a guy, oh, maybe you'll have that confidence to go talk to that girl that you've been always so scared to talk to, or something like that. You're gonna get that compliment. I think that's how I would really describe the brand community part of it. I think the one thing that's tough is that we really want to find a way to make it a quantitative value. Did I say that right? Quantitative value.
I like
Like,
the numbers.
yeah, no, numbers value. We really
The
want to do
numbers.
something like we really want to do something like that, but at the same time, like, make people want to stay with the brand. You don't want just a one-time purchase. You want multiple purchases from this one person because they really feel that sort of lifestyle. They feel the storytelling behind the brand that they feel they can resonate with. And I can go in circles about this, but that's really the biggest thing about community because it does take a lot of time to build a community. And when you build a community right or build a community properly with people that really resonate with the brand, that goes a long way.
Yeah.
That's the more
Yeah, and
longevity part of it.
it pays in
Mhm.
dividends. Oh my
Dividends.
goodness, now we're
Dividends.
all getting tongue-tied. I'm gonna use smaller words, that's what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
going to do.
Nothing
But it
more than
pays
four
back.
letters.
I know, nothing more than 4 letters. Now we're gonna have to think about that. It's like a different game of Wordle. But it does pay you back in returns
Hmm.
for from a brand perspective. Now we've talked about like a brand community. I'm really curious because I know I've had so many conversations with people who have like these creators and these influencers, and they want to make them feel like they are part of a community, right? How do you currently do that, or what's your advice for a brand to be able to foster community amongst their roster of influencers? Is it, I mean, one of the things that you mentioned was getting on the line with them, but let's say I've got a roster of like 200 creators. I'm not realistically going to get on the line with them in a given time, in a small time frame, right? So like how else can you kind of build that sense of community amongst your existing influencer roster?
Yeah, that's a great thing because, like, well, that's one thing too. If I had to take a step backwards, like, you're not always going to start with 200 people. You're going to start with that core
Yeah.
group, and then
Yeah,
you're
I guess that's true.
building it. So to kind of show you up right there. But I think
We poke
if you did
holes
have
in
a
my
bigger group, I'm a smart ass sometimes. Um,
no.
but I mean, if you had to go, like, let's just say hypothetically, you had a group of 200 people. Like, yeah, it's going to be hard to get a call with 200 people. This is the part where you have to get creative and saying, I've actually done research and seen other brands where they connect the group and saying like, hey, why don't we do it? Hey, we have a US group. Let's do everyone in the US. Let's jump on a call with them in the US. Okay, we have a group from
Yeah,
Asia. Let's do that. We have a group from Europe. Let's do that. I've seen cool ways of doing it. I've seen people get paired up in like a buddy program. I've heard of that from someone that was really, really smart. Told me about a buddy program. But
sounds like a really smart person.
I've also seen other brands do that where, let's say, Katya, you're based in SoCal. I'm based in SoCal, and
Yeah,
maybe we don't have exactly similar content, but we really want to break the ice between us two creators. Like, I've seen them going like, "Hey, putting you guys in an email thread, putting you guys in a group chat on IG. Like, here, let's get to know each other. Let's do something great." And I think that's one of the biggest things. If you're very, very cautious with who you let in the community, everyone should mesh together well, and that's usually a fact about it. Like, I've never had any issue with anyone saying like, "Oh, like." I don't get along with Katya because of X, Y, and Z. Like, the reason I never had that is because everyone in the community is so brand aligned, but also they really are a group of individuals trying to get their shit done. You know what I
yeah,
mean? I think that's how I would say it is that, like, make sure you somewhat take the time. But again, to Katya's point, you are not going to have 200 people in a program right away. You're going to build it out properly. Like, for cuts, we started off with 40 people. I really got to know those 40 people, and then we went up to 50, 60 to 100 to 150. And that's how it was. And I still had at least 100 people jumping on these Zoom calls because they really understood the point of it. They really understood, hey, these calls mean something. This is how we feel a part of it. Of course, we've done little things like newsletters. We try to do meetups when we can, but we also encourage them to really connect with each other. Where
yeah.
I've seen photos of some of our creators meeting up together without me telling them to. They just met because we were the bridge to connect them.
Yeah, I love that. So, I mean, like what I hear is, the part of building brand community requires a level of personalization and like the
Mhm.
ability to create relationships with people. And then also, being consistent and continuing that engagement, that connection, and then helping foster even more connections as well. It's almost like you're building your own social network. Kind
Mhm.
of knowing all of that, do you have any examples aside from cuts of a brand that is really just kind of crushing it as it pertains to like community?
Brand crushing it towards community. I mean,
Mhm.
I'd say a handful. Like I think one thing I really like, I brought up GoPro. I don't know why, but I just feel like GoPro always just does a great job in doing that. I feel like they always have
Yeah.
everyone there. They really they make it so global where someone in the Philippines who's filming out there some tropical video could connect with someone that's from New York that's filming in an urban setting. Like I think that's one of the biggest things. Um, I think a lot of big ones that I want to bring up are like fitness brands do an amazing job. I can bring up Gymshark as an absolute stud in that. I can bring up
So
we're gonna
true.
have a dark sport. Um, I love their stuff. I think Dark Sport's awesome because like they really take time into putting a messaging behind all the collections they do, and that really sparks the community that way. I can bring up another brand like I've seen LSKD, who's another cool one where anytime they have a store opening, I feel like I see their stuff everywhere where it's just wild to see that. But I mean, like I said, a community, what I think is a great community might be something different to someone else. They might think a great community is just straight up, hey, these guys are driving revenue. These guys are going out doing X, Y, and Z. But when I think of a community, I think of people that are actually there because they want to be there and they enjoy it. It doesn't feel like a
Yeah.
job. It just feels like, hey, I'm hanging out with a group of guys and I'm excited for this event.
Yeah.
Or
It's a
girls, sorry,
shared
guys or girls.
guys or girls. We're
Yeah, guys or
yes,
girls.
we're all
But
inclusive. It's everybody with
it's
people, with people.
everybody. Bring it up.
Yeah, everybody
Dogs
with
are welcome
people.
too. We love dogs over here.
Dogs, animals, people, the
Yeah.
whole 9 yards. Well, I appreciate you taking so much time with me. I do have one final question for you. Are you ready?
If I said
Get
no,
ready.
what would you do?
Nothing. We'd continue on. Um, but I wanna be polite. All right. If you knew then what you know now, what's the marketing advice that you give to yourself?
What's the marketing advice I give to myself? That's a interesting one. I think so. I mean, I've known you for a couple of years now. I think what I would say before then, I was actually very quiet. Believe it or not, I was someone where
I
I
don't
literally
believe
just.
it.
What'd you say?
I don't believe it, and none of the listeners believe it.
No, no, no. Like I was very quiet. Like I'd kind of just keep to myself, keep to my group. I would never put myself out there, and like doing stuff. But I think really just when it comes to marketing, just be yourself. Like, don't hesitate to go like, all right, it's okay to fail. It's okay to like do this and that because that's when you really learn. Like, I remember when I first started in marketing, like I was so nervous to jump on calls and meet people. I would make the
Yeah.
call awkward and stuff like that. But as I started saying like, you know what, let's just be myself. Let's just keep doing what I'm doing. And I started gaining more confidence in doing that. Again, it's such a
Yeah.
cliche just saying being yourself because everyone's going to say that. But like I said, I was someone very, very quiet in the beginning. And I said, hey, I need to step out of my comfort zone and really learn and really just own on new opportunities and new obstacles in front of me. And look where I am today. And I'm not saying this isn't my end all be all. I'm just getting started as I got like, just like you are too. But meeting cool people like you, meeting people like the creators I've met, working for cool brands, connecting with a ton of other brands just from the space we're in, just because I'm open and honest, go like, hey, like I'd love to just chat. Like worst case scenario, someone's gonna say no. Okay, like what does that do? That's
Yeah.
not gonna affect me. Yeah, of course you're gonna be bummed for a second, but I'm like, okay, cool. Like I'm like you, I'm like, all right, cool. Like I'm gonna go to the next person. Let me say what's up to them, and they'll give me the door, and then you're gonna regret not giving me that chance. It's gonna be
Exactly.
one of those things.
Some people would think that that's like a hustle mentality, right? Like just
Mhm.
always going after it. But I think like to your point, you do have to be able to be yourself and put it out there. And not as many people say that as many people as you would think do say that, but it is true. Like when you stop overthinking about like
Mhm.
what you should say in this situation, should I even be in this meeting? And I think like that's where imposter syndrome comes in. You're basically letting them walk into a meeting with you, like, hey, this is my imposter syndrome, this
Yeah.
is me, so I'm going to let them not do the talking for us, we're just going to not talk. Like just don't invite them to the meeting, just be
Mhm.
there Be there or be square. But
Yeah.
but really, like, you have to be there. And I think it's almost like, I don't know if you've ever read that Malcolm Gladwell book about like the whole, it takes 10,000 hours to become like an expert. Like, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. The more comfortable you get in like your own cadence, what you're
Mhm.
saying, and the confidence, and knowing that like, uh, you're just talking to people. Do you know what I
Exactly.
mean? Like, at the end of the day, we're both people. We all have worries. We all have problems. We all have joys. Like, we're all kind of coming from the same place. So I think that's great.
100%. And it was like one of those things where like before like getting into this, like I was always so shy and stuff like that. I bet you if you met me, whatever, I think the biggest change, and I can actually tell you like when I changed was when I studied abroad in Belgium. That whole
Yeah.
marketing role, like that was my big switch. And it's funny, one of my best friends since childhood, he even tells me like that was one of the biggest things you did because like I could tell it's different. I remember when I got back from there, and like I said, he's my best friend. He's like, whoa, like I know something's different, and it was one of that like things that we just talked about. But even now, I bet you back then, before 2015, I bet you I wouldn't have jumped on call with you because I'd have been too scared to talk to you. Like
Oh my
it's
God.
crazy
Now
to
I
think
can't
about
even
stuff like
get,
that.
I know. Now I can't get you to be quiet. Just
No,
kidding.
exactly. Well, we actually can talk all day because that's who we are. But
This is true. They don't know that we talked for almost an hour before we even hopped on here.
I know we
Well,
did. We talked.
I cannot thank you enough for coming on here. I always enjoy talking to you and seeing your face. Thank you so much.
Of course, anytime. And you kind of gave them a foreshadowing, and I'm going to hold it to you. You said we might be able to have multiple parts, so I hope to come back again.
Absolutely.
I hope to help
Absolutely.
you out in any way. And, I always have love for you, Katya.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Bye. That was a very fun episode with my good friend Gabe. We definitely went down some sidetracks, but I have some key takeaways for you. Okay. Number one, building a successful brand community really requires putting a face to the name, right? Personifying your brand. It also means being inclusive and also making personal connections with the community members. Creating opportunities for influencers to meet with the brand CEO or other people from the brand, along with other creators, can also help foster a sense of community and really inspire others when you do. It really takes time to develop a community, but making everyone feel included and acknowledging their contribution can help them feel valued and invested in the brand, which is going to pay back in dividends. Number two, the value of a brand's community really lies in kind of the inspiration and motivation it provides to its members, or what I like to call is like the value. A strong community not only entices others to join, but it also helps build your brand equity. While quantitative data like social media engagement and sales can measure the impact of community, it can be challenging to put a value on it. The longevity of the community and its ability to really create repeat customers is what sets it apart and again pays back in dividends in the long run. And my last takeaway from this episode, to really kind of foster that sense of community among a brand's roster of influencers specifically, it's important to get creative and find ways to connect with them. Even if you have a large group of influencers, would it be ideal if you could just message everybody individually? Absolutely, but that's not humanly possible. So, what we're talking about when we're identifying creative ways to really stay connected is it can include organizing group calls or pairings with one another, right? Pairings with other members, creating email threads or group chats, and really encouraging them to connect with each other, right? Put the networking and the connecting and building relationships in their hands. It's crucial to be cautious, though, with who you allow into your community. You really want to ensure that everyone gets along and it's brand aligned. Starting with a smaller core group of influencers and then gradually building out your community can also be a really helpful approach. It's kind of slow and steady, is really what wins the race. It can be just as impactful. Now, I'd love to hear what nuggets or insights you walked away with from today's episode. Subscribe and follow on LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And a special thank you to my podcast producers, the amazing team at Content Allies. Let me know if you want more information. I am obsessed with them and I love to share the wealth. Also, check out the episode page to learn a little bit more about Gabe, as well as how you can get in touch with me. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. Until next time, may the conversation flow, the laughter linger, and the outlook remain optimistic, but grounded in reality. This is Katya signing off.